welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam, the first of 3 episodes that happened this week. 4 episodes? I don't know. A bunch of episodes happening this week. So, it's not something I discuss a lot on here, because the opportunity doesn't really present itself too much. And I feel like the turnaround on this, based on my response to this, is not going to increase the likelihood that people are going to hear this and be like, oh, I want to hear him talk about anime more, because it feels like the anime community is kind of insular from what I can remember from my time when I used to watch anime more, consistently. It's insular. It feels, it's kind of like, we want acceptance. We want people to accept it, and we want, a 100% approval rating at any given point. And it's like, well, that's unrealistic to ask for, but here we are. And I feel like that's going to give away how I feel about Belle, having just seen Belle. But I wanted to like it. I really did. I did really like there are other movies I've liked. I love Satoshi Kon's work, and Miyazaki, obviously, but, I love Paprika. Grave of the Fireflies is one of my favorites. I have a lot of anime movies that I do really love. Akira, obviously. I haven't finished it yet, but I started watching, what was that show that everyone fucking talks about all the time? Neon Genesis Evangelion. That I started watching, but I haven't finished yet. I've watched anime before, and I love science fiction, and anime tends to go towards science fiction and fantasy in a lot of cases. And then Belle was getting notoriety for being, best animated picture. I mean, by all accounts from what I've seen so far, Encanto is probably going to take that home. And if I had a vote, I would probably vote for The Mitchells vs. the Machines, if we're going to talk about a science fiction movie that is animated and sets out to do, and does what it sets out to do well. I think that, by and large, that this movie doesn't really accomplish that. Because let me just break down the premise for anyone out there who's unfamiliar with this movie, because it's possible that there's a lot of people out here who are like, Belle, what the fuck? Basically, the idea is there's this metaverse, which we're at the point now where that's just common vernacular. So the metaverse is this big, thing, and it's called the U. You go in there, and there's a biometric scanner that creates an avatar of you based on the perfect version of you, somehow. Again, science fiction and fantasy kind of merge a little bit sometimes, especially in this, but so whatever, it makes a perfect version of you as your avatar. You go, and you are an avatar, you are, waving, you're doing that. How everything works is kind of a little bit nebulous. Is it, thought-controlled? Is it, I kind of figured it was more thought-controlled, because it's, the logistics of doing it all around. It doesn't matter. Anyway, and, does the avatar still do things while you're there, or while you're not there? Whatever. And there are points in the movie where it's so the avatar is kind of just existing in the real world while she's doing other things. Or existing in the virtual world while she's doing other things. Oh well, whatever. Back on topic. So this exists. There's a girl, her mom died when she was a kid. She goes into the virtual world and, it turns into a pop star who can sing. And overnight she's a sensation. And then at one of her concerts, or her only concert that she has in the movie, that is scheduled and is planned, she there's an invasion by an outside fighter from the martial arts part of the metaverse, and he comes in and ruins her show, and then she becomes obsessed with tracking down this person and find out why he is who he is, and trying to help him. And I think that here's the thing. There's a bunch of interesting concepts in play here, because science fiction, as I've said before, is meant to show, take our world, warp it through a funhouse mirror, or a Black Mirror, if you will, and show it to society and show what's the worst thing we can do with things that are being done with science right now. And then moving from there, what is the cautionary tale behind this? So what you can do here is what happens when we give a teenager all of this access to social media and all of this fame and all of that, the double life aspect of it that she's leading through this entire thing. That's an angle that could be explored and would have been more interesting to watch than what we got. Which is this weird, kind of Beauty and the Beast type thing, but doesn't want to fully commit to that. I think that, or if they just did the Beauty and the Beast aspect, that would have worked too. But, there are so many things in this movie that it's just, semantically don't make sense, and it feels like these things kind of pull me out of it. And maybe that's just a me problem, but, I don't need every single detail explained. But, the fact that she's in league with her best friend is not explained. It's just her friend sends her a referral to join the virtual world, but it's not explained that the friend is hey, I'm going to do your music for you, and we're going to do this, and you're going to become a singer when you go in there, and then we're going to do this whole thing, and this whole plan is for you to be a pop star. It gets to the point where in the third act, the friend's no, if you unmask or unveil, you will spoil everything we've worked for. And I'm you haven't really worked for anything in this movie. She enters the virtual world. Within 5 minutes, she's singing in the middle of everywhere. And then the next day she wakes up, she's got over 1 million followers. And it's well, okay, cool, but what's going on with this? What is the, where's the story here? And then it's how does this one guy get sponsored enough that he has a laser that can unveil people? And how does that work? Why is that a thing? And why is that a thing that this guy can have if he's not a moderator or something? And then it's he unveils her and then she doesn't vanish, and it's well, why didn't she vanish? I'm that's a great question. Why didn't she vanish? Or my next question, was she supposed to vanish? Because that wasn't discussed. What is the repercussion of unveiling besides the fact that in this virtual world you're now just yourself? And it's that none of this is ever articulated in a meaningful way that makes it where it's oh, we're going to watch, this is going to be interesting. These are all key pieces of information that are, it's not even semantic stuff where it's I'm not nitpicking and looking for plot holes. It's these are key pieces of information that should drive the stakes and the plot and the conflict of the movie. And it's all of these things are just kind of, things that aren't actually discussed at all. And it's just kind of they come up as the movie requires them to come up, but it's not explained. There's no, I don't even know how to, put it. It's the movie needs to, if the movie wants you to believe there are stakes to an action happening, they need to explain to you what the stakes are. And there are opportunities to do this throughout the movie. And it's they could have cut down a number of scenes. And the thing is, the movie's only 2 hours. So they could have cut and they could have added and made the movie more cohesive in this way. So by the time we get to the end and we see that she's do you want to go back to being a sad girl? It's well, all we saw all through the movie is even as Belle, her mood hasn't changed. So it's her unmasking and being hey, I'm going to be, who I am underneath the anonymity without the anonymity. It's well, okay, but we haven't seen that develop at all. That's a key part of the story that's kind of just ignored. And it feels like an important piece of information, considering we get to the third act, and it's her giving up Belle doesn't feel like a sacrifice when we get to the third act. And that's a key piece of the third act. Especially when we're going to sit here and weigh, oh, she's going to unveil. That is an important thing. Why is it important? Reasons. Apparently it doesn't even remove her from the fucking virtual world. She's just standing in the virtual world as herself. Okay. So what was the repercussion? Can she go back to being Belle? Because I don't think that was explained. They explained you can only have one account per person because of biometrics, but they never explained that if you are in there as Belle, you don't, if you get unveiled, can you be revealed? That's not explained in the movie either. And then it appears that she is reveiled, so it's like, oh, so the sacrifice meant absolutely nothing then. Okay, like, it's just infuriating to me when basic conventions of storytelling are not adhered to. And it's like, well, these are key things that need to be, handled. The relationship between the prettiest girl in school and the weird guy who wants to start a canoeing club by himself is completely extraneous information, but we spend like 5 minutes in a scene of the two of them awkwardly walking into and out of the scene. And it's like, it's played for laughs, but it's a waste of time. And it has no impact on the plot. That's time that could have been spent fleshing out the plot. Making it where, the underlying issue that we're addressing here is fleshed out in a way. And it's like you could have done there are a lot of angles that could have been taken that were done differently. And it's like, I don't think we necessarily need to sit here and like have all the speculation, oh, who is the beast? Who is it? It's like, it turns out to be no one that she knows anyway, so it really doesn't matter. There's just so much about this movie that kind of just baffles me from a structural standpoint. Where it's like, I have no problem in a movie, departing from standard, structure to do something new and unique. I have absolutely no problem with that. I have a problem with it when you're trying to, tell a cohesive and articulate story, and you're just omitting key pieces of information. And not omitting key pieces of information, and it's like all the stuff with the choir, has 2 scenes that could have been 1. It doesn't really do too much extra. The dad has a role that is basically superfluous, and I think that had we gotten to the 3rd act and we saw that, had the relationship with her dad been a bellwether, that would have been a better use of the dad, I think. Because look, there is a version of this movie where, we get the check-in with the dad more consistently than just 3 times. Once in the beginning, once in the middle, and once in the end. Where it's like, in the beginning, it's like, do you want to ride to school? No. Do you want to have dinner? No. And then it's like, okay. And then the same thing happens in the middle. And then at the end, she's like, yeah, I will have dinner with you, because she's grown and she's changed. But there's a version of this movie where the relationship with the father is kind of a way to, sit here and it acts as like a, like a meteorologist of sorts, where it's like, oh, okay, as her mood worsens, we use her reaction to these questions in that way, where it's like, she got a lot of stress, she freaks out on the dad. She's got this going on, she freaks out on the dad. And it's like, there's options on the table to do bigger and better things, but and usually I don't like saying that, because I feel like I'm like Monday morning quarterbacking and being like, well, you could have done this instead, but at the same time, you could have done that, and had they not done what they did, I would have been less inclined to bring up what they could have done. But because you kind of laid the groundwork to do it, it feels like you had the indication you were going to do it, and then decided not to. And that's not to say that like, the thing is, the movie is beautiful, and the voice acting is great, and it's like, all the stuff that happens in the metaverse is really cool, and it looks amazing, and it's worth watching for that alone. I'm not taking anything away from it for that. What I'm saying is, when you do animation, using the animation to its fullest is one of the most important things, and they do that here. I can't say they don't. There's a lot of really cool imagery, like the way the castle is like half destroyed, where the beast lives, where like the entire way the metaverse is rendered and all that. Beautiful. And then on top of it, I think that like, it's interesting that they do that, and then they juxtapose the stuff that happens in the real world to look kind of mundane, to the point where you're like, let's get back to the metaverse. And that's important because it again could have been used to reflect how her life is. where she doesn't want to see the real world. She wants to go back to the metaverse, and it looks like there was a conscious choice there of clear 2-dimension versus 2.5, 3-dimension. But they don't play with that, and they lay the groundwork to play with that, but they don't, and that's again a problem. Because that's the thing with animation. It's like the visual style has to look good, but it also has to have it doesn't have to have a narrative reason. But if you're going to play with the visual style in the way this movie does, you really should have the narrative tie into it. And I think that's another failing of the movie, is that, like, look, you're doing all these cool things with visual effects, but it doesn't mesh right with the story, and it's like you're not using it to its fullest narratively. And I think that narrative is the most important part of, I think narrative is probably one of the most important parts of filmmaking, where it's like, if the story's bad, you can put, great actors in, you can do, great cinematography work, you can do all these great things, but if the story's bad, it's going to, you need to do a lot to offset a bad story, for me, at least. Like, you can't just, put a nice coat of paint on it and be like, see, it's great. Because that doesn't work for me. It's like, you can sit here and make the movie as pretty as possible, but if the movie is not, like, if the story doesn't grab, and the story doesn't do what it should to make you want to, dive in and be in this world, I think that's a problem. And that's the other thing, is they don't do enough to really grab you with the metaverse aspect of it out of the gate. How it works, what would make someone in this world want to join the metaverse. And I think that, like, the best way to do something like that would be, like, I would have opened the movie, and I hate doing this, but I would have opened the movie with marketing material from within the world. To show, like, this is the metaverse. This is the you. I keep calling it the metaverse. That's what we call it in real life. But it's like, this is the you. This is the world we've created. This is what we're doing. This was your life before, this will be your life after. And that would have been a great way to be like, look, this is the idea. This is what we're doing. This is what we think is the best idea. And the idea of sponsors is very broadly put in, and it's, like, not quite meaningful enough, because it's like, well, what does it have anything to do with anything at all? It doesn't, over the course of the movie. There are just so many things that are, very small threads that could have went to something greater, but are just kind of dropped. And not dropped, because dropped implies that they were ever picked up with to begin with. It's like going to a park and seeing a ball there, and you're like, oh, that's cool, and then you go and you're like, oh, that's someone else's, so let's just leave it there, because it's like, but, like, you could have picked it up and ran with it, you saw it, you ignored it. And I think that's a fundamental problem with this movie. It's not great. I think there are better, animated movies that we can spend our time seeing. If you want to spend 2 hours watching an animated movie, watch The Mitchells vs. the Machines. That movie is great. Encanto was better than this. I would even say watch Luca over this. And I haven't seen enough anime to be able to recommend another Japanese movie, modern anime. You know what? Tokyo Godfathers. Watch Tokyo Godfathers. That movie's fantastic. But if you want to cry, watch Grave of the Fireflies. Holy fuck, that movie will fuck you up. If you're in the mood to just be sad, just watch Grave of the Fireflies. It is just, oh my god. It is one of the saddest fucking movies I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, I mean, I would say just skip Belle. There's nothing about Belle that really demands. I mean, and that's the thing, is there's something like, oh, see it in IMAX, see it in IMAX. And I'm like, I probably could have seen this in a standard theater. There's nothing great about it. So we'll wrap up there for today. We have Book of Boba Fett tomorrow morning. And then there was another one, I forgot what it was, though. Book of Boba Fett. Naomi we're going to talk about. So So we'll wrap up there for today, and until the next episode, have a great rest of your week.